Hit
All right,
it.
great. You gonna gavel us in?
Oh,
You got
got
it.
it.
Yes.
Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So good afternoon. So we're here this afternoon to talk about age-restricted housing. And the purpose of today is to give some history about how the county has addressed age-restricted housing over the years. And then there have been some concerns about how we're currently handling it. And so what I'd like to do is walk through some of the things that I've heard that are concerns about this type of development and look at individual requirements and look at examples and then talk through what are the types of things that you would like us to look into to potentially revise code. So that will hopefully give us clear direction as far as these are the items that we need to look at to make sure that we can improve what age-restricted housing looks like through the county. So with that, yes, sir.
Does everybody know everybody?
We can certainly do introductions if.
No, if we're good, we're good.
I
Okay.
just don't know you. I
No,
don't know.
let's do
Okay.
them, because,
What?
if I may.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
I just don't know you, but that's
Brian
okay.
Van
We'll go around.
Fossen, Fire Protection Specialist,
Okay.
Fire EMS.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So.
I guessed by the shirt.
I have my name.
I couldn't see it behind the mic.
That's only because, in case you forget it.
Right.
Yes. So,
Sorry.
no, that's fine. So just to start off, exactly what is age-restricted housing? And this is covered in federal law and state law. There's the Housing for Older Persons Act, which works with the Fair Housing Act and it basically allows for relaxing some of the requirements from the family-type requirements related to housing and the Fair Housing Act. Essentially, it requires at least 80% of the occupied units to have at least one person who is 55 or older. So that's the general rule. What's important to note is that this is in federal law, it's in state law. We do not have anything related to it in county code because we're not required to administer or enforce or anything like that, right? So if there is a complaint about whether a business that's been designated as age restricted, that would go to the state. The county would not be involved in it. We do not have to enforce this. So we do not specifically have a definition for age-restricted housing as a term, but we have a couple of uses that fall under that category. And so I want to touch on those real quick. So the first is retirement home. So think of retirement home as multifamily housing. So it's in a condo building where you have units within the building. So that's a retirement home, right? Examples be, a recent example would be the 44 Liberty that's just off of Cleves Mill and Maryland 26. So that's a retirement home example.
What is Brightview?
Right view.
Assisted living.
That's assisted
That's
living,
assisted
independent
living.
living
Well,
too.
it is independent living as well, so
Was
it's
that
Yeah,
on-
listed
but
too.
is that under this, or is that,
It's in the
they
second.
do more?
Yeah, so that may actually fall under another definition I'll get to
Okay.
in a minute. Yep. So then we have retirement village, which think in terms of age-restricted housing as in single-family housing, right? So townhomes, duplexes, single-family homes, and so on. What's important to note is that from looking at in a retirement village, you will see houses that are closer together, so they are kind of clustered together as a general term, but this is very different than a cluster subdivision because these are sites. Think in terms of like a, like, what am I trying to think of here? Like a strip mall type site, but instead of stores, you have homes, right? It's all one site. Now, the individual dwellings may be owned by individual property owners, like a condo, but the overall property itself is owned by a management company. So all of the utilities, the roads, those are all privately owned and maintained. Okay, so it's different from a subdivision. So, and then Commissioner Kyler, I think this may be what Brightview may be categorized as. It's another use called a continuing care retirement community. So this is where you have a diversity of housing types. You might have multifamily, you might have single family, but it also has like nursing type care. And so I think of like Carroll Lutheran Village as another example. So there's a much more aging in place type ability, because as additional care is needed, you can migrate from one type of living unit to another. So
I'd like to I'm not positive. I know Fairhaven and Carroll Lutheran Village are CCRCs, Continuing Care Retirement Community. They have to be licensed that way. I don't know if our nursing home assisted livings are licensed the same way. Only because for definitional purposes,
Right.
we should check that out, because it's a whole different way they do them. And it's evolving, this whole industry.
Yes.
So I don't know that is licensed
So-
as that. We might need to call it something else.
Yeah, so assisted living and nursing homes are different uses as well, but they're not specific to this model of multiple types of dwelling units and so
I know
on.
what you're saying. I just say we might
Yeah.
define it as something, assisted livings and nursing homes or something.
So I just want to touch real quick on how these types of assisted living, these age-restricted dwellings are captured in the plans. In our master plan, just wanted to point out that it's noted that the Maryland Department of Planning estimates that our population is expected to be 23.5%, will be 65 and older by 2030. So it's just a recognition that we have an aging population here in Carroll County. And then the plan was adjusted also to reflect some of the things that were discussed in the Freedom Plan, which one of the primary things that was mentioned in the Freedom Plan, and I'll read this, is that eventually most baby boomers may need or demand different housing types as they age, moving out of their single-family homes located on large lots and into smaller attached or detached homes, such as villas, townhomes, apartment-style living, communities, retirement age-restricted communities, in-law apartments, or townhomes located on smaller lots. So the Freedom Plan recognized that as people age, they want to have less property to maintain and want to move towards these types of communities where things are the outside areas are managed for them. And then the plan describes that the way the county can address this desire is through our Chapter 155 and 158. So I want to go through kind of the history of age-restricted housing. So it first shows up as retirement homes in 1971, and it was specifically defined as multi-dwelling units consisting of efficiencies and one-bedroom dwellings. It was permitted as a conditional use in agriculture and residential zoning district, and allowed in their business districts. At the time, the density that was allowed was one dwelling unit for every 3,000 square feet of gross area. So that's equivalent to 14 and a half dwelling units per acre. So 14 and a half, whether it's houses, multi-family, and so on, really didn't matter. It was 14 and a half dwelling units per acre was the maximum density. So then in 1979, there was a small change which got rid of the reference to efficiencies in one-bedroom dwelling units. Then in 1995, the retirement home was defined as a development consisting of one or more buildings designed to meet the needs of senior citizens and so on. So this presumably then allowed for those single-family townhomes, single-family residences, duplexes, and so on. And the density remained unchanged. It was still one dwelling unit for every 3,000 square feet, or 14 and a half dwelling units per acre. Then in 2000, there was, the definition stayed the same, but where it was allowed to be changed was no longer allowed in the ag district. It was a conditional use in R40, R20, and R10, and the density still remained one dwelling unit for 3,000 square feet. That's important because we're going to be talking about Nels Acres in a little bit as an example of looking at the different types of design requirements. And Nels Acres was originally approved in 2005, so they were under this requirement. So in 2005, they asked for, I think it was 350 some units at Nels Acres. And using the one dwelling unit for 3,000 square feet, that's how they were approved. So then in 2009, it became a little bit more clearly defined that single family and townhomes were part of that retirement home definition. And there was a decrease in the density allowed in those specific cases. So single family homes and townhomes, the density was changed to one dwelling unit for every 75,000 square feet, which is equivalent to 5.8 dwelling units per acre. So it went from the 14.5 down to 5.8, specifically for single-family and townhomes, whereas the multifamily stayed the same, stayed at the 1 per 3,000. And that's also important then in terms of Nels Acres, because this was the code then that was in place in 2016 when they came back for a reaffirmation of their development, because now the density has decreased to 5.8 dwelling units per acre, and that's what they were approved under in 2016. So in 2019, following the adoption of the Freedom Plan, we went through a progression of addressing different codes. We first addressed commercial and industrial, then we moved on to residential. So in 2019, the change was made that retirement homes were added as a principal permitted use in the commercial district and employment campus. Then in 2021, it was recognized that it was a little confusing having just one retirement home definition that included multifamily and single use. So the code was split. And so the retirement home, which again is multifamily, was left as a definition. It was removed from the R40 and the R20 zoning districts. And that was largely in part due to projects like Snowden's Creek and so on. It's still allowed in the R10 and the R75 and still allowed it in C1, C2 and employment campus. And the density is still 1 dwelling unit for 3,000 square feet. But this new definition for retirement village to separate out the single family and townhomes from that overall definition was created. And that was created as a conditional use in R20, R10, R75. And the density for R20 was defined as 3.5 dwelling units per acre. There is no density requirement specifically defined like that for R10 and R75 because presumably they would use the same density of the underlying zoning district. And there's no density restrictions in the C1, C2, and employment campus, because essentially you would be looking at what are the other bulk requirements in those districts. So kind of looking at history, the concept of retirement village, where it's single-family homes and townhomes, in 1971 it was 14.5 dwelling units per acre. In 2009 that got decreased to 5.8, and then in 2021 it was decreased down to 3.5. So that's the progression that over the years, how it's been changed. So that's how our code achieved that 3.5 dwelling units per acre. So any questions regarding the history and how we got to where we are today from a code perspective?
Yeah, I see how that progressed.
Yes.
As you know, and over time, look at Carroll Lutheran Village, it was up in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great place. We gotta have
Yeah.
places like that. What we're trying to do now is fit it into an existing plan.
Yes.
And that's different. That's what's changed over all these years.
Yes.
And that's why when, I guess things happened over several years, but back in, I don't know what age, what year, with Adams Paradise.
Mm-hmm.
In subdivision, plan, I think it was R20 or whatever, houses all around it, and there was a house there with like 6 acres.
Yes.
Somebody from Montgomery County came in, they wanted, based on our rules, put in,
Mhm.
how many units are there? A lot.
Oh, quite a few.
3-story
Yeah.
big,
Yes,
apartment
yeah.
complex. And the planning commission said, no. They said, no, this is too big, it doesn't fit in the middle of this neighborhood, where this
Mhm.
one house is, it's 6 acres, it's gonna be looming over everything, never done anything like, things changed, because
Yeah.
in the old days, it was more for the assisted livings, you
Mhm.
kicked out the back, you put some units on the back. We didn't have fitting into existing neighborhoods, this type of project.
Yeah.
So the planning commission says no. Of course, they then went to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and they said, hey, there's no restrictions on your size and height and all that kind of stuff, so they said, go ahead. Well, then, this community around there, got up in arms, Commissioner Howard came in, the commissioners then said, you know what, this doesn't belong here, we're gonna take it to court.
Right.
And Dave Bowersox, represented the community and represented, the commissioners went to court, they went to 2 levels of court, they were gonna take it to the 3rd level, they didn't take it. And basically, after 2 years of being in litigation over this, I think what I got from it, the judge said, hey, you've had 2 years to fix this and you haven't. In other words, you can fix things till the shovel's in the ground. At least, that's called late vesting, and not that you wanna wait till the shovel's in the ground. We had all this time for this guy, he never settled on the property, and I say we, collectively, the county at the time never went back and changed it. I don't know why. So they won, and they built it, and they tried to accommodate by putting berms up, but there's still, it's a huge building, and you could say, is that what was predicted, this huge? And people spent a lot of money that lived around it, and the county spent money. Then we get up to the Freedom Plan. We got 6 years of doing the Freedom Plan, and they kept saying, we'll fix it during the Freedom, we'll fix this problem that we didn't anticipate during this process. I ask about it like all the time. Oh yes, we're taking care of it, we're taking care of it. Okay. Freedom Plan comes out, you have your land use designations, everything seems good, and the next thing you know, these things start propping up again. And, you know, then I saw Nels Acres, and, you know, we'll have to, when I read the code, or when I read the book, things don't jive, because it says if you haven't started a project within 18 months, the new code takes over. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean they put a plan in? Does it mean they put a shovel in the ground? I can't see where, there's a number of issues with that. I call it the poster child for things we need to fix. But I can't see where something that's been, just because they put something in 30 years ago, I mean, they can still build it. So until the shovel goes in the ground, they need to follow the new rules. So I still can't see how they got approved there on 1 acre lots that they could build 20 to 25 homes, and now they built 130 homes. So that to me is just, okay, we have to go back and look at the approvals and what happened, but things changed in that time, and I don't think it should have been considered as the same project from 20, 30 years ago. That's just me, things changed. So that, and that's in our rules, it does say you have, unless someone says you can move forward. And I don't know, I don't want to get into all the details of that right now.
Yep.
So then where we are today?
Yep.
I think the county put forth a good faith effort to say, this is not what we want. So we expected it to get fixed. Now, the devil's in the details of reading the code. I read the code and I kept saying, how can this be? It's R20,000. It clearly says in R20,000, you know, that you can have half-acre lots. It doesn't say, it says you can cluster, but it doesn't say anything about retirement homes at all. It does. There's a chart in the back,
Yeah.
and the chart, if you read it, it says the words overrule the chart. The chart's fine with little X's in it, but the words overrule the chart. So the words don't say anything about moving things, making it even more clustered than clustering in a retirement village. And all we have in our rules is 2, 3, I guess it's 3 sentences, about what a retirement village is. The authorization of conditional use for retirement village shall be subject to prior concept development plan and traffic study review, which I don't think that was done either, and determination of density, exterior design, and site layout by the planning commission. The determination of density shall not be increased at any subsequent site plan. Okay, so you read that, and then you read, you know, what R20 is, and it clearly says it should be single-family homes, it should be this, R20,000 is the minimum. And then I'm like, okay, how do we get to this? And then I read the back where it just says, oh, exceptions on page, and I don't know the date. I look at the dates these things come in. That was 2021 when it got approved, which was, again, you all know, during COVID, all this was happening, this got approved. And then somehow, this one, I don't know the date, but it says 2023. Exceptions. The bulk requirements and density in a retirement village shall be established by the planning commission at the time of the initial plan. Okay, so they get to just decide what it is. And I can't see how on, they were, Nels Acres was R 40,000, 40,000, 1 acre lots. They could have gotten 25 yield. And at that point, you look at the road situation that we now have a huge problem with. 25 houses had a lot different, would have a lot different impact on a site than now 130 houses, because now we have a road issue. So my point is, grandfathering somebody in for 25 years or 20 years or whatever is not something we should be doing, because things change. Your traffic changes, and now, you know, we have a road that we're going to pay for. I get into all that. But somehow during these exceptions, even this exception, where did it come from? And all of a sudden, 3.5.
Which exception,
The
ma'am?
exception for, it just says exceptions. It doesn't even say retirement homes. It doesn't say purpose or intent. It just exceptions. The bulk requirements of density in a retirement village shall be established by the planning commission at the time of the initial site plan review. The maximum allowable density in the R20 for a retirement village shall not exceed 3 1/2 dwellings per acre and shall not be increased at any sub, okay.
So that was passed in 2021. but-
No, it wasn't, it was 20, this exception.
No, that 3.5 dwelling units per acre was passed in
Okay,
2021.
it doesn't have a date on the bottom. It says 2023 at the bottom of the page. It's in the book. And the question becomes a couple things. Why was the exception passed when we were trying to fix something? And number two, why wasn't it under retirement villages? And why is it at the end under exceptions? Because you wouldn't even, I had to read it and say, like, what are these exceptions? Like, why are they back here? When were they approved and when were they discussed? And that we were supposed to be fixing the problem of, no, they have way more than 3.5. They have, you know from 25 acres, 1 acre, that's about 20 to 25 houses.
So I'm going to go
Okay,
through
but
all
I'm
of that.
just,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is, I can't see this, you can put all this stuff out there, but you're not saying what the underlying zoning was. Like,
I'm going to touch on that in a minute.
Okay.
Yes. So, and as we've discussed, Nels Acres is one of the concerns, and this is the most recent aerial photo that I've been able to find, because it's currently under construction, and this photo was probably taken back in the spring of this year. So we can refer back to this aerial for when we're talking about things. This is a rendering. I didn't have a current picture of what's being constructed, but this is a rendering of what they were proposing for from Street View of
They're
what
not
Nels
that
Acres.
nice. They don't look that nice.
As another example, this is Winifred Manor. This was approved back in 1996. This is more of the retirement home type concept, where it's multifamily and so on. So we can look at this as for that example, and this is what Winifred Manor looks like from Street View. So to start with, and this is what you were bringing up, Commissioner, is so let's talk to start with the overall design of what these sites look like. And when the code was changed for Retirement Village, there was some discussion regarding which comes first. Does BZA approve the concept first, or does Planning Commission look at things like density and site layout and things like that? And so what was decided was that our process would be that first Planning and Zoning Commission would approve the density, the exterior design, and the site layout. Then it would go to BZA for the conditional approval. And then it would come through basically our normal process, which is concept of review and approval by Planning Commission and final approval by Planning Commission. And so the code that's at the top there was really just meant to address that process, to make sure that it went first to Planning Commission for those first key components, that they approved those, and then it could go to Board of Zoning Appeals for the concept.
Well, just a
for the
question in
conditional
general.
use.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have a retirement village, and we say
Yes.
this is what it is. What's the I guess the main question I have, what is the purpose of a retirement community? And why are we giving extra density?
The
I
purpose.
mean, I know
of
why, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
if we say, hey, we want to retire, why?
Yeah.
You actually get more density here than you do in clustering, so why?
So it's the recognition that the building type lending itself to townhomes and so on, that can allow for additional density. And through the years, that density has come down. So back in the 70s, it was up at 14.5. Then in 2009, it came down to just under 6. And now it's down to 3.5. So it's recognizing that the building model on this site can support, it's on public water and sewer, can support a development that's more dense. Recognizing that the people who are living there don't necessarily want to be maintaining their yards. They move there because they want a management company to be taking care of the open space and their amenities and so on and so forth.
Okay, so that's what, I think we should make sure we have a purpose.
Yeah.
We don't have a purpose. The reason I believe that you allow more density is because you get things out of it. And if you read, I mentioned Howard County, I read Frederick County. You can look up, I just can Google it, do AI, and it'll tell you, here's what's a retirement community. And the whole purpose of doing this is for not taking care of things, especially in
Yep.
the ones that are, and for having amenities, having open
Yeah.
space, and you're getting something in return.
Yeah. And-
What my frustration has been of the not getting, and what does that mean? Because we allow more density now in a retirement village than we do in a clustering,
Yes.
and they're not getting any extra thing for it. They don't have to mow their yard because there is no yard.
Right,
Now,
yeah.
I've seen lots of nice ones of these,
Yeah.
and there is a little yard. They
Yeah,
have some
yeah.
green space. So
So,
what I'm
yeah.
trying to say, we need a purpose. Why did we allow this? And to me, if you read the other ones, there's a purpose.
Yep.
It's to allow people, like Carroll Lutheran Village. It's beautiful. They have open space, but in a CCRC, you have to do that.
Yeah.
But that's what I want to get to. Why did
Yes.
we ever put this together to begin with? And
Yep.
then to put the purpose, and I sent this to you months ago, but basically, the purpose of bonus density, I call it bonus, whatever, up zoning, for age-restricted communities is to trade additional density for the expectation and specific design requirements that benefit the targeted over 55 community, with the goal of enabling our seniors to age in place and to have quality, usable open space with a variety of amenities. Single-family homes, villas, townhouses, and condos usually feature one level of living with minimal stairs, wider doorways, and I go on. This is what is in most, and I'm just trying to get to this point
Yep,
of
we
why
can certainly add that.
And I
Yep.
just want to make sure it's on the record that we should, why are we doing this?
Sure.
This is the purpose. It's not just to
Yeah.
put more houses together and have people over 55 living in them.
Yep,
And then
understood.
you mentioned earlier about in federal law and state law.
Yeah,
That's fine, that they can, so right now, we're saying, the reason these are so prevalent is because the way we're allowing it, it's very, very profitable, because you don't have to do any of these things. We want to make it profit, but we're getting something in return. But some of it's because the school's being overcrowded, but we don't have any way to enforce the over 55. We have no
Right.
way to enforce it, because there's nothing that says, we say here, but we don't have any enforcement, it's not in our deed. Most counties
it is
even,
I'm sorry, it is in the deed.
it's not on the deeds in Ellsbury,
Yes, it is.
It's either in the deed or in the.
The covenants.
but we have no way to enforce the
The county
covenants.
doesn't enforce it.
No, that's my point. So because we're doing it for other reasons too, either put it in the deed or we have some enforcement on the covenants. It's not on their deeds. I've looked their deeds up. There's not on any of the deeds.
It is in some, it's a choice, and it's either in their deed or in their covenants, and they're self-enforced. So, yeah, I don't believe, we'll have to check whether there are any other counties that actually enforce them. I don't think that's, the standard practice.
Well, if you put it in a deed, you don't have to self-enforce. Somebody can, like, if you're in the community, all of a sudden, this is happening in Florida right now.
The covenants are also a contract between the owners of the land and the residents. So those are private contracts that are just as enforceable as the deed. So there's no distinction between the two.
But what I'm trying to
And
say
they're
is-
recorded in the land
But for
records
the
also.
sake-
And they're all recorded.
For the sake of over 55, many communities down in Florida started off as over 55, and it was in their covenants. And then the demand wasn't there, so they started changing it. They started changing their covenants and allowing everyone in. If they want to change their covenants, they can. But for the sake of why we gave the extra density, we gave extra density so that it wouldn't have impact on our schools or whatever. So if they want to go change it like tomorrow, if they say, hey, we just want to open it up to everybody, you're shaking your head.
No, they
but-
couldn't.
Okay,
It
but
would not
we-
meet county code.
Yeah.
I don't think you're accurate on that. So all I'm asking is.
That would be a code violation.
What-
Yes, it would be a code
But
violation.
who's going to enforce it?
We would. A zoning violation, we would
So
enforce.
10 years from now, if
Yes.
somebody, okay. I think we should have it very clear in ours. It is very clear in the others that the county, this is a county reason. It's not just the state that we can enforce it. It can't be through their covenants because they control their covenants. I don't think we have it tight enough.
That may be fine. So we're keeping record of suggestions. Any of the board members want to make suggestions? So you would
Yeah.
like to see a purpose for
Yep.
each code section? You'd like to see
Well,
more
especially this
stronger
one, we're talking about
language?
this, yes.
Stronger language with regard to covenants or deed restrictions on this page 55. I know some folks want to leave earlier.
The
so I
other,
just wanted
the other
to-
question is between, and this is where I'll bring you in while it's important. So I just learned there's a difference between a site plan and a subdivision plan.
Yes.
And one of the big issues that's come to my attention from our fire company is the fact that, and this is other places than just here, but the whole difference between a site plan, that you don't have the same rules for road size and setbacks and all, for whatever reason, and then the subdivision plan
Yeah.
is concerning, and number one is the roads. It's like that
Yeah.
they're,
I think
So
we're going to get to
I'm going to get to
which
that.
I just want to
Yes, I'm
mention,
covering
but you
it.
said somebody had to leave, and I just, the whole
Yep.
difference in the site plan and the.
Yep, I'll get to it in just a minute. So, so from a density perspective, again, as you mentioned, Nels Acres zoned R40,000. Under the code under which it was approved, it was one dwelling unit per 7,500 square feet. So you, doing the math, they would have been permitted to build 151 units, and there are 129 that are proposed and under construction.
What year was that?
The BZA approval that approved their, that density was 2016. Yeah.
And they didn't start, they didn't start in 2016. My
No.
point is, they didn't start, 18 months went by, they have to start
So
under
I
the.
think the 18 months is for final approved plans. Laura, would you, I
I mean,
don't,
I
I
don't
think there's a
get into that.
misunderstanding of the
Yeah.
18 months.
Yes,
I don't think
yeah.
it's, but we can get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, under current code, and these were the changes that were made after the Freedom Plan, retirement villages are not permitted in our 40,000 anymore. And then we created that retirement village definition. So, under current code, they're allowed 3.5 dwelling units per acre if it's R20. And so if you did that math, it would be 91 units. But again, that doesn't apply to Nels Acres because they were approved prior to that. I looked up Howard County's code, and Howard County's code is based on the net acres that's usable, right? And so when I looked at Nels Acres and I kind of figured out what's usable out of the 26 acres, and I came up with just shy of 11 acres. So using Howard County's calculation, they could build 273 units in Howard County in a similar site.
3.5 times that is not.
Yeah.
3.5 times what you just said is not that.
So Howard County would be 25 units per net acre. So if you take 25 units times the 10.9, you get 273 units.
And that's on a piece of property where you're going up. If you look at single-family definition, it says single, it's not multifamily housing. You can't go from, or 40,000 and put multifamily housing on it. Maybe in Howard County you can, but here we're not supposed to. And it's not what,
Right, yes, it's not allowed on the multifamily is not allowed in R40 and R20
right, so
anymore.
the example you just
So-
used, they couldn't have done that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the items that Planning Commission looks at very early on is the exterior design. And we have no code related to exterior design. So the Planning Commission has a responsibility to review and look at compatibility with community and so on. So this is what was presented to the Planning Commission, the site layout and the renderings of what it would look like. Now, looking at exterior design and getting it to fit in with the community, I looked at Howard County to see how they address that, because it's a qualitative thing. Like, one person's opinion of what fits in a community versus another could be very different. And this is how Howard County addresses it in their code. So they say proposed buildings and site design are compatible with residential development in the vicinity. And to achieve this, you do it through grading and landscaping to allow the site to blend in. And also having an architectural transition with buildings around the perimeter that are similar in scale, style, and so on, or having additional buffering. So if we want to consider, and I'm all for considering additional changes to our code, to try and to give the Planning Commission some guidance as far as looking at how the exteriors of these buildings look and how they fit with the community, this is an example of how Howard County addresses it. So again, I don't think I said it from the beginning, I'm not looking for the solutions today. I'm more looking for guidance from the board that, yes, we want to look into this, and then we'll delve into what are the options and so on and come back with recommendations. So looking at exterior design, like I mentioned, we do not have any code, any guidance regarding exterior design. If we want to provide Planning Commission with more guidance as to how they figure out if something fits in with the surrounding neighborhood, certainly support that.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, very good. So now we'll get into some of the more detailed site design requirements. So I've, one of the letter that you shared from the fire chief in the area and so on, talked about rear access for these types of projects. So rear access, I think we would need to sort of quantify exactly what we're talking about. Are we talking about vehicular rear access? Are we talking about pedestrian that people can get to, like firefighters can get to the backs of the properties? And are we talking about like single-family townhomes, or are we talking only about the multifamily type
Well, I mean,
developments?
I guess in
So,
general,
yeah,
and I think I shared this with you, and this is not a great story, but years ago, my parents built a house. They wanted to put a wraparound porch on it, on a white acre. And it had 20-foot side, so 20 here, 20, it's 40 feet. We had to come to the zoning folks to get it done. They told us we couldn't do it because we couldn't get a fire truck through, so they couldn't wrap the porch around. It's not a huge deal, they didn't wrap, but it was 40 feet. We couldn't put the extra 5 feet of porch wrapping around because we couldn't, they wouldn't grant us the variance for the 5 feet, even though now we still have 35 feet between us. So if that was a fire issue then, maybe that was 25 years ago, but we came up, we went, asked for the variance, they said no because of this fire, we said fine.
Yeah.
So that was a 35, now we have like 7 to 10 feet between, I don't know if it's 7 feet between these houses, and you can't see them, but there's 15 in a row, and there's only like a very small gap. So you almost have to go around the whole back, and you can't access it from the other side because there's a berm and a whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not just getting through, but you could even, it's hard to get through people.
Yeah.
Because there's such a little space, and there's
So-
50, you'd have to go around the whole back with your hoses and everything. So I guess that is an issue from the rear, and we've had that with others. One was Adams Paradise or Snowden Creek. They wrote in back then and said, there was no access, it was so high, the wall built up, that they couldn't get a ladder up there. My issue is with the road width, the big issue is the road width.
I'll get to
But-
that in a minute.
But the
Yeah.
whole access, why is there a different setback requirement for a clustered community, or a subdivision plan versus a site plan?
So the,
Setback? Do you
so,
mean setback?
Setback.
setbacks are related to the distance from buildings and so on to the property line. So in a retirement community like this, the property line is the outside. There are not individual, so it's not a subdivision, so it's one site. So setbacks would be to the exterior line.
No, but for the back of
that.
that, I'm talking, the back of that home to the sight line, the property line.
There is no property line interior.
No, I'm talking about, there's a property line around the whole space. and
Yes.
They're all around the back.
Okay?
So on a subdivision, there's a setback, you have to have it so many feet, the
Yes.
rear yard, why is it different for a site plan? Why isn't the setback the same? So there's space to get around. They can go closer to the perimeters on this type of.
I would
lot.
have to look at the bulk requirements specifically for.
No, I think
I can
you're
get
the
an
one,
answer to
listen,
you.
you're
Yeah.
the one who taught me the difference between a site plan and
Yeah, yeah.
subdivision plan. And there is a difference, and I'm trying to figure
Yeah.
out, if you have it for a site plan.
Yes.
Why is it not, if there's a reason,
Mm-hmm.
why isn't the reason the same if it's done one site versus you're splitting it all up into little
I
pieces?
got you. I follow what you're saying.
Yeah, and-
I don't have the answer for
Okay.
you. I will look into the bulk requirements. If you know, then please.
So it's dependent on the zoning district, right? And then you have a setback line. And when you create those subdivision properties, they would each have a setback line as well, versus the whole site has a setback around it, right? And then in cluster subdivisions, the provisions permit not only smaller lot sizes, but also an adjustment to the setbacks.
But the question I have is
So it would
why?
be per,
But why?
why can you
I
do
mean,
an
if
adjustment?
this was on
for
a subdivision plan, this exact same project,
Mm-hmm.
for the-
it would have different setbacks. Why? Why is it different on a site, just because they own one property?
Right.
And say, wait, it's usually the homeowner association gets deeded the property. Why are the setback requirements different just because of how it's laid out, if it's a site or subdivision?
If it was a standard subdivision, it's gonna be the same. The setback is going to be the same.
But they're not.
If it's a 40-foot setback, it's going to be a 40-foot setback on the lot. From a rear property line or a front it's going to be the same as from
But in
the
this
site.
development, it's R40. So in an R40 development, the setback would be X, but this is a different setback for
The
this.
difference is the, not subdivision versus site. If I understand Laura correctly, I believe the difference isn't because it's site plan versus subdivision. The difference is because it's clustered or not clustered.
Let us dig into the bulk requirements and we'll come back to you on
Yeah,
that.
the rear, if we're
So-
talking rear yard, in the R40, it's 50 feet.
50 feet.
But this is R40. And it's not 50 feet, not 20 feet. It's like right off the property line.
We'll look into it.
Okay.
So as far as access to the rear of these buildings, so they're grouped in 4 and 6 dwelling buildings. So there's, some have 4, 5, and 6.
They're mostly all five. They're mostly all five.
Yeah, and then there's a 10-foot space in between each of the buildings. So as far as access, I don't know if there's any fire code that requires something greater to be able to gain access to the back of a townhome.
There are a few things in the
One-
fire
One
code.
question
Yes.
while you're talking fire stuff.
Yeah,
25 years ago, they wouldn't have all been sprinklered.
Correct.
They're all sprinklered now, which
Correct.
makes a giant difference.
yes.
It does.
Yes, you're absolutely
Well,
right.
We've had sprinklering for attached homes for a long time. I mean, we always had sprinklers in attached homes. I mean, we put it on for single-family homes, but I think in Maryland, we've had it for attached homes forever. I mean, for as long as I can remember. That was just added for all homes. You know what I'm saying? If you were multifamily, if you had a
it was
wall that you
before that.
shared, I think we've had that for a long, long time. But,
Right.
yeah.
So, right before we,
Yeah.
yeah.
Single-family homes that started in 2007 for apartments and townhomes. It was a little bit before that. I don't remember what the exact date was, but yes, these will all be, everything's going to be sprinklered, all this stuff. So yes, we do have some provisions in the fire code. We don't drive fire engines off the road, for one thing, okay? So just give very briefly, our plan reviews for these things and most of the building plans reviews that I do are based on state fire prevention code requirements, okay? Every county in the state has to abide by the State Fire Prevention Code with the exception of Baltimore City. So these two documents here, the Life Safety Code, NFPA 101, and NFPA 1, which is the fire code, are adopted into the State Fire Prevention Code with amendments, okay, state amendments. So I use this every day, all right? So the fire code with specific to projects like this, there is a section on fire department access roads and access for fire service vehicles and things like that. I do have the letter that Sykesville sent in, and these are not new concerns. Okay, these are not. We've made comments about this for years, but and since we don't have anything on the county level, okay, that specifies access and things like that, we have to use this State Fire Prevention Code, and this is written into law. So fire apparatus access roads are provided. Basically, very simply, where I pull up the fire truck to the front of the building, I should be able to get to the back within 150 feet, okay, of any part of the back of the building in a non-sprinklered building. Okay, in a sprinklered building, there's an exception. You can go up to 450 feet around to the back of the building. And this came into play. You mentioned Snowden's Creek. That was a challenging job. Okay, I looked at that the first time. I said, "You got to be kidding!" But they're within that 450 feet from the parking lot around to the back. That is a fully sprinklered building. All right, they do have walkways, but yeah, it's a valid concern. But they were in compliance with the fire code with that project.
Before.
So,
Yep.
so this is one of the concerns that I've had, the emergency rear access.
Yep.
And while I certainly understand that there are certain, I guess, minimum requirements, I think we ought to be more restrictive. I've spoken with a number of our firefighters and EMS workers over the last couple of weeks, and there are some locations in the county where even though the building or the facility may technically meet code, it still is a cumbersome job for them to get around to the rear of these buildings in an emergency situation. So I would love if we could look into something that is based off of that, but is stricter, so that the men and women who are in fire and EMS have an easier time of accessing these buildings in an emergency from the rear.
We can certainly look into that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I think what's happened here, I'm not talking old buildings we can't change.
Right.
This is new construction. We
Sure.
want it to be, the thing that I've seen happening is we just keep putting more and more and more in a row. And the middle gets smaller and smaller and smaller to get through. 10 feet's not a huge amount. I don't think some of them are 10 feet. You can barely get through. But my point is, they used to do like twos. We had duplexes and triplexes, then we had quads. Now we're going into 5, 5, 5. Might as well just hook them together. So we're getting to a point we here in Carroll County, we weren't like that before. And I think we should try to make sure we have accessibility. I personally think there's not accessibility in the front either, depending on when you go because of the parking, which is another whole issue. But I mean, you got back is a problem. You got to go around the sides. Now that's a long way to go around from, if a truck parks there, it depends on where the unit is. I think we need to make sure that
Vehicular rear access.
And when I want to tell you, my fire department means a lot to me. They're volunteers. They've been raising the red flag on lots of these things, and they're like, I think they get tired of raising the red flag because it's like, okay, why bother? Because nobody's going to pay any attention. I am paying attention. This is my neighborhood, and I don't want somebody to say, well, why'd they let them do this? And maybe they do it somewhere else, but we need to make sure that we have the access whether it's getting out of the basement. These are over 55 communities.
Yeah. So I heard you
But
mention.
how do you have the access if, I read the letter and they want wider steps and ADA, but I gotta mow my backyard. It's contradictory.
Who has to mow their
But
backyard?
Can I finish?
Yeah, but no, you just, they don't mow their backyard.
And if I have a backyard that's fire truck accessible, it probably is gonna have a fence, it's probably gonna have a fire pit. Do they just run over that? I mean, it's not practical, and again, I'm 20 years older than 55, and I still ain't ready for one of them, but if I am, I don't want a backyard. I don't want a front yard. And if a fire truck can't put the fire out, they need to buy a $3 million fire truck instead of $1.5 million. They have access, I think, and the next thing's going to be I'm not allowed anything in my backyard, so they can drive through it. It's
Keep talking.
So,
what's that?
Keep talking.
What are you saying?
I'm listening to you.
What are you saying?
First, they don't have backyards. They don't
What's
have
that?
They don't have backyards, and somebody mows it for them.
You just said a fire truck needs to access behind the building.
Well, there's no.
How do they do that?
No, that's
You
a-
need a backyard to do that. And
Okay.
what I'm talking about is if in your utopia world they did that, I'd want a fence, I'd want a fire pit. They couldn't drive their fire truck back there.
Well, in
They
these com-
still would have to stretch their
Well, in these
hose.
communities, you're not allowed to do any of that. You can't have a fence, you can't have a fire pit. You have, the yard's this big, so you can't do that to your backyard.
You were saying you didn't want the yard like that.
So let me try to, okay, sorry, I know,
That's
it's a great
fine.
presentation, so.
Great.
So I want to make sure I understand the bigger picture here, and let's go back a step. The density usage. Okay, let's go back to that. I mean, because, you know, Commissioner Krebs, you're driving a lot of this stuff. The density usage is not the issue. Am I right? I mean, we're, okay, so
It's both.
once we've
It is.
established that, and I think that's important for people to know because we've gone over a lot here. So your concerns then are really boiling down to what's in language. Things like exterior design, site design, fire and EMS accessibility, setbacks, aesthetics. You want to see a purpose, you want to see design standards, and you want to see them defined by the county. So that's what we're really talking about. I just want to make sure
Yes.
I understand
Yes.
what the issue, okay, so
Yeah.
we're talking about making these things better, not just better looking, but also providing things like green spaces and walkways and stuff like that where we need them.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the debate's not just that density usage. It's just strictly how things look, and they look that way for a purpose. And if they negatively affect the density usage, and it has to go down a little bit because you've got to have these things in there, so be it. I just want to make sure I
It is about-
understand.
It is sort of about density too, because the purpose, I believe, of giving density for retirement communities is to have people be able to age in place
That-
and to have other things.
That's what I'm
instead.
trying to get
Yeah.
at. So I
It is
just want to
that.
make sure I understand exactly where we are in this conversation. So,
And I'm
And
going to
when
get to amenities in a
Okay,
minute.
yeah.
And actually, something you said, Commissioner, that I made note of, is that you had a concern about how many homes were being put in a row. So that's something that we can look at also. I mean, if we could put it in code that we don't want any more than 4 in a row, or whatever we want to put in. So we'll look into that as well.
And they do that a lot of places. I
Yeah.
mean, 3 or 4, yes.
Yeah.
And- Or say
Yeah,
more of
so
this,
my-
more, yes.
and so my concern is that we're focusing on that because those are the things we want to change. And we do that in a tangible way so we can kind of track all these things. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like individual commissioners, you know, you start putting that list together of things that you think need to be addressed. And that's where I want to try
Oh,
to
I've got it all. I've
stay.
got the list. He said
Okay,
that.
I just want to try to stay that way because I don't think that should necessarily take a long time to do and to fix. And we are looking at, it is one of the subgroups of the deferral that we're still, you know, talking about. So just trying to kind of keep things going here.
And I think the way, I was told, the way they came up with the 5 is because you allowed 5 drip lines and technical review or something. I'm not sure how we got to 5, but I think, I think it should have been a more deliberate decision of how, you know, we've just started having these things, at least in our part. I mean, I'm sure the towns have been offered this stuff, but we've just started to have this conversation. You know,
Yeah.
I've never seen the word, I don't even know what the word for 5 is. It was never contemplated anywhere in the
Right.
plan. You talk about duplexes and triplexes.
Right.
I don't even know quads is in there.
Yeah.
So we've gone from duplexes and triplexes to 5.
Yep.
Twin something, and it was never contemplated.
Right.
So I think we need to contemplate it, look at, then you end up, the whole community, when you see this built out now, it's like just house, 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 and stormwater management, there's nowhere,
Yeah.
there's not a green space anywhere.
No, and I think it's because the code is silent to it. And
It's
so-
silent
So
to it.
let's put it in.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So are
Not a
we-
problem. Yep.
So do you have a place in the presentation to talk about things like definitions? For example, villas or age-restricted condominiums? Because I've noticed in some of the development or developers that have reached out to us and through the course of this conversation, you know, they're using terms like villa or
Yeah.
terms like age-restricted condominium.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would love that to have some kind of definition or some kind of clarity because in speaking with some of the developers, they mean one thing by villa and then another developer means something else by a villa. And then one really nice developer I spoke with yesterday was talking about how, you know, a villa isn't that entirely different from a 2-story townhouse,
Right.
as an example.
Yeah.
So I think some clarification for what we mean by what kind of unit I think is going to be helpful as well.
Sure, yeah. My gut feel is that that's more of a marketing type term. So my understanding of a villa, and my mother lives in one in Pennsylvania, is that a villa is two homes that share a common wall, so sort of like a duplex. But it's a one-story, and where she lives, her garage and the neighbor's garage share a common wall. So that's how they define a villa, but we have one, the Johnsville
Johnsville,
Road.
yep.
They're calling those villas, but they're essentially townhomes. So I
Yeah,
think it's more of a
2
marketing
floors.
term, but we could certainly look into kind of nailing down what those definitions are.
And the
Right, and
marketing
for
term-
them, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
so for them, they can call it whatever they want for the term, for the purposes of marketing, but for our purposes, just so we know, specifically what it is they intend to build, just
Yes.
for clarity for us.
Yeah, yep.
And we don't
that
have
makes
anything
sense.
even in that definition of what, what is a townhome, what is a villa, or what is a condo? And I didn't realize these are all condos. I think of a condo as up and down.
Right,
But
yeah.
that just for me
Condo
is,
is condo is a scheme of ownership.
I understand
not a-
that now,
Not
okay.
a design.
but I never knew till now that these are all condos.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And we don't have definition of condo. I don't think there's a definition of condo in the code. Is there?
I don't, that's,
may not.
again, that's a legal term of art that refers to ownership of a scheme, not a site development or, or a zoning. You can live in totally single-family detached homes that could be condos.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we would want to codify that in your zoning ordinance, because that's, again, that's an
But
ownership
it would
model,
explain, it would sort of explain the difference. And then a villa in general, except is a bigger, wider unit than a townhouse, in general.
Right. Yeah.
Now, you gotta define what's wider, is it 30 feet, is it 32 feet? But
And-
it's just, be nice to have some consistencies to what they are.
Right, and when we go through this, you may find that trying to define all these little nuances is really immaterial. What's important is getting what the, more, maybe more what the board wants to see in terms of looks, like your, suggestion that it not be more than 2 or 3 connected, or that it not be more than 2 or 3 stories, if that were something the board wanted, or, that every elevation be different in some way, or that they all be the same, if that's,
Well, and the
that might
diversity of
be a-
types, the diversity of home types is something
Yeah,
that came
well,
up in the housing
right.
work group. And when I say diversity, people always think smaller. I'm thinking, there are a lot of these communities, like, we were looking at one up at Frederick. Frederick County, I think, they have put in they put in 50% single. Now, single, they're still close together. They're just a single unit. They sell them out like that, they're gone. They are the most popular, I don't care what, they're the most popular, what's being sold right now is, and they're still close together, but they might be 3,000 square feet. Someone moves from here. We don't have a diversity of home types. They're all doing just the minimum. That's not true. They're not all doing that. But this particular one, they're all the same unit. How do we get a variety? How do we say we want to see a variety of things in a development?
So does the board want to require a certain percentage of a certain type? I mean, historically, it's been up to the developer as to meeting the market requirements and so on. I don't think the county's ever specified that we want 10% townhomes, 20% single family,
Well, I would
and so
suggest,
on.
and this is just me,
Yeah.
I would suggest that depending on where they're putting it, so like in this one, if they were putting this in R40, then they would have put single family close together, open space, it would have said, oh, that fits into the neighborhood of R40. In R20 is too, it's single family homes, if they would do more of that, it would fit into that.
Okay.
In R10, then you would start getting, because that's what's in R10. So the whole issue, and it says it like all through the Freedom Plan, fits in with existing communities. Depending, you're still clustering them, you're clustering them to get the open space and to not have to take care of stuff around you. But it still fits into the neighborhood, it's still that type of housing. I mean, so that's,
Okay.
when I say fits in, that to me, that's what that means to me, depending on what, there's one project that's R10 and commercial, and I looked at that yesterday, I met with the developer, looked at that, I said, you know what, this looks very nice. We'll make sure about the road sizes, but that it fits in with what is there.
Okay.
That's what we're trying, you know what I'm saying, in
Okay.
we don't do it in R40, but if we did, it would be more single family. If R20 should be at least mostly, because that's what's there, and there'll be more units in there, but the rest will be the usable opens. And when I say open space, I'm talking about a place for these people to be able to go outside and sit in a gazebo or have their little shuffleboard. That's why you give the density away.
Yeah, okay. So roads has been mentioned, and I apologize that these details are too small to really look at, but just as a reminder, Nels Acres is a site plan, so the roads are privately owned, they're not county owned. And so we don't review to approve the dimensions of the roads because it's a site plan, what the developer wants to put in there. Now, from a fire perspective, I think the requirement is at least 20 feet wide. And
Right,
so
at
I
least
I
20.
believe you look at, Brian looks at it from that perspective.
Right.
You can't, I apologize, you can't really see it, but the county has two details for residential, for if these were county roads. So on cul-de-sacs, the requirement is 22 feet wide. Once you get beyond the cul-de-sacs and you're on the larger residential closed section streets, then we go to 30 feet wide. So those are the county details, and that historically has addressed fire access and so on and so forth. With Nels Acres, they are building 25 feet wide. So they exceed the minimum of what we would typically see on a cul-de-sac or a loop road. Now, arguably, if Nels Acres were public roads, would we maybe have required 30 feet? Don't know. It's kind of a moot point because it's privately owned, but they are proposing 25 feet wide.
Wait a minute, before you stop there.
Yes.
We talked about this the other day. So, I know they're privately owned, they have to maintain them, all that
Yes.
stuff. We still invite you guys to come pick them up when they're having a heart attack, to
Yes.
get through. Okay.
Yes.
We still invite Carroll Transit to go down, we still have the Amazon truck. So we still have all these things coming into these communities that we're approving.
Yes.
It's disturbing to me that we cannot get through. I mean, you go there on any day, and they're all parking on the sidewalk, because you can't get through. And because they're so close together, you have to, I know requiring parking, we require 2 spots, and then they say there's 2 spots in the garage. Well, how many people are gonna well, move their cars out, move these 2 cars out? They're stacking up cars in a garage, but there should be some additional parking allowed for these folks, because they do have visitors. And on that whole strip, there's not a place to park, so they're just parking there anyway, which I don't blame them, and you can't get through. And there's so many houses that you can't even go to the other end and park, so they're just parking there, and then now we have mountable curbs, so they're parking up on the sidewalk. I don't think, I think we should require the same width the road if they're gonna allow parking, and if they're not gonna allow, if they are, obviously you have to allow, there's nowhere else for them to go. There's 16 spots at the clubhouse for 130 houses, and there's no additional spots anywhere. So, there should be some acknowledgement that people will park there.
Yeah.
So how do we require that? And if they wanna make them smaller, and you just said they're gonna put no parking signs up, what are these, I mean, where are they gonna park? They shouldn't, the road should have been wider, so they could have at least parked on one side. So I'd like to hear from you guys about that.
So if I may, regarding the on-street parking, it's in the site plan that there's no parking allowed on the streets. And because this is a site plan, if there are people parking on the streets, we can address that as a zoning violation. So if somebody complains about it, our zoning administrator can go out and say, you've got, to the site owner, you've got people parking on the street, this is a zoning violation because it's in conflict with your site plan. And then the property owner would have to address the people parking on the streets.
And what I'm trying to say, I just bought this house. I figured the roads are wide enough. There's no signs up. I now bought a $750,000 townhouse.
You're trying, if I may, you're trying to prevent it from happening.
Because I don't mean, because if I'm these people, and you said the signs are going up, I'm gonna say, oh my gosh, where am I gonna park? Why did I buy into this dumb community that I can't park anywhere? We somehow, to me, that's, we've got to either say the roads need, or you need to put signs up before the first house is sold. Because where are you gonna have people park that come to visit you? You're in a senior community, you're gonna park a half a mile away. There's no excess parking. So what I'm trying to say is if they choose, I'm not sure if they knew that was the rule. This size, we need to be very clear, it's this many feet for no parking at all, and you must put signs up. And if not, because we don't want the neighbor to call and say, oh, my neighbor's person's parked out front. They're not gonna call you, because until the accident comes, till the fire truck tries, or the EMS or somebody tries to get down. So I think we should either make them have the standard 30 feet in a place that's that high density that, like, I have a road that's, I forget, nobody parks on our road because we have long driveways. And if there is a person in a regular development, one parks here, one parks here. But in a place like this, there's nowhere else to go. You're stacked up and you must park across from each other. So on these higher density ones, it's even more, I don't know that the developer knew it. I don't know, but we should put it in there. If you're gonna have parking on the street, it must be this wide on both sides. And if not, you need to have signs up before the houses are built. And that's one of our big issues.
I regularly make comments on plan reviews for residential sites, especially high density, and places like this. addressing this issue of parking, okay? I tell them, you need to restrict parking on one or both sides or sign it, and yeah, it happens. It's parking, and parking enforcement's always a problem. Yeah, even if the road's 25 feet wide and you have cars parked on both sides, then you've got a one-lane street, and it just doesn't work. So, yeah, this is something we regularly address, but how that's followed through when the place is already built and is unknown to me, so.
But we shouldn't let it get to that point. And I appreciate the reports that have come out. Laura, you read a lot of them. They're good. They got, the information's in there, no parking allowed. I showed the person that designed it, they never knew that. I circled it and said,
They put it on the plans.
I don't know. We just need to make it very clear, this is what it is. But if, those developments, you can't have no parking. So I think we should require either 25 or 30 feet, because you can't expect there to be no parking.
So the next thing I wanted to, well, let me skip to parking.
Yep.
So our code requires, for age-restricted two-family and townhomes, 2 parking spaces for dwellings, per dwelling unit. And the planning commission can require additional overflow and guest parking. So the planning commission has the ability to make that requirement. Looking at Frederick County Code and Howard County Code, it's very similar. So 2 for each dwelling unit. For multifamily, they start looking into the number of bedrooms and so on. So it's very similar. On these, for these projects, each dwelling unit has 2-car garage, and the driveways are, I scaled them, and they look to be at least 18 feet wide, which is the width of 2 parking spaces, and at least 20 feet long. So there's, bidimensionally, there is room for 4 cars to park at every dwelling. So they're exceeding our parking requirements. Now, if we want to make changes and require that those driveways be wider so that when you step out of your vehicle, you're stepping onto a driveway and it's not just 18 feet wide, we certainly can do that. But I guess my point is that they're meeting the parking requirements. If we want to require additional guest parking and in certain locations, we can certainly do that. Going back to the roadway widths, if we want to require 30 feet wide roads, we can do that. But I think there has to be a discussion, though, with the DPW folks and others, because there are other factors that come into roadway widths. When you get wider roadways, you get people driving faster. And so do we want to, there's often a desire to make roads narrower to slow people down. So where is that balance? And right now, the balance that we've got is with the county standards for public roads, 22 feet wide and 30 feet wide, depending on how many houses are along it. But if we want to require a certain width, we can certainly have those discussions. I just want to recognize that there are other factors that go into it other than just access for fire engines.
Well, just keep in mind, right now, if there's no parking, if the no parking signs go up, I feel sorry for these people, number one, because I don't know where they're going to have guests. I guess they're going to have any company. They can't park anywhere. So your road's going to be actually wider because the road's going to be open and I have cars parked on both sides. So the cars actually jam them up. I think we need to, I know what our code says. My question is, how do we make the code be something that where you'd want to live? When I live, I don't want to have to get out of my car. I'm a senior citizen. I might be on a walker. I hope not. We need a wheelchair. I might need some assistance. I could take my mother out all the time. She needs assistance getting out of her car. Right now, she has to get, if she lived there, she'd have to get out and get in the grass. So it should be wide enough that you can park your cars, because you can't park anywhere else. You can open the doors and not hit your car, and you can get out and still be either on the sidewalk or be on the pavement. That's what I think is reasonable, especially for this community. And I think that's reasonable. There should be a way to get into your house that is on a pavement, that is not walking into the grass. It's so narrow because the garages are small, and so it just goes right out. Some garage, I've been looking at driveways. My own driveway is like 2 foot bigger here and 2 foot bigger there, so I plenty of room. But it's bigger than the doors of the garage. It just goes a little bit over, so you can get out and walk on the pavement. This again, we're trying to design something that is for seniors. It should be like that for everybody, but this is a product in demand. But let's give them a safe product, and the whole speeding thing is how you design a road, whether it's going like this or if it's going like, weaving in and out. But I would just drive over there when it's busy. You can't get around. So I want our trucks, our EMS, our emergency vehicles, our Amazon truck to be able to get down the road safely and not have to call parking enforcement and get the guy towed. That's not a way to plan a community. You understand what I'm saying? I don't wanna call the
understand what
police,
you're saying, yeah.
because they wanna.
There are
they
just a
don't-
lot of, I guess all I'm saying is we can absolutely explore looking at different options, and we can come up with the pros and cons as to why a 25 versus a 30 versus a 45, whatever widths and pros and cons for those.
And the thing with the planning commission.
Yes.
I will tell you, go to those communities, I've been to a bunch of them, they all have extra parking, they have extra parking. So someone somewhere is saying, okay, you need, for X many houses, you have to have 3 or 4 extra parking spots. And it's like down a little bit, they're all over. So I don't know that our planning commission has ever required extra parking. I think we should put it in there as, they shouldn't have to be looking at all that stuff. It's a lot to think about. I think it should be some requirement that there's X number of extra parking spots. And I know we have in our code one parking spot for every 3,000 feet of the clubhouse, 16 spots. If they have a meeting, there's 130 houses there. They have a community meeting. I have community meetings at our communities like this. We have 200 people that park, that come to the meeting. So you only have 16 parking spots. There's nowhere on the road to park. They're gonna all walk.
Yeah, they're active adults, we want them all to walk.
This isn't an active community because there's nowhere to be active. There's no, you can't even walk on the sidewalk because the cars are parked on the sidewalk. Okay, you understand,
Yes.
I know what
Yep.
our code says, but we're trying to do, I'm trying to.
What we're
ma-
trying to get is what is the board interested in changing? Certainly looking at road widths
And I think you need to be cautious because 30 feet versus 25 is five more feet really gonna fix the world. And I look at Westminster, behind, J&P's, which is very, more expensive houses than this. The driveways, you almost can't get out if you park 2 together and you're on the grass. The road on a Sunday, I need to stop and let a car coming the other way go by before I duck around parked cars. And you know, that's, I don't hear anybody in there complaining about it. They wave and move on, but it's a little bit life.
You know, and I do hear people claim, like my fire department, and they complain because
The fire department, yeah.
if these cars are parked on both sides of the road, which they're not allowed to be, they cannot get through, period.
Well, there's hundreds of
What
houses.
you just answered, is that true? There's no space, you have to push the cars out of the way. There's no, when people are parked there, there's not enough road space for the truck to get through, period. So,
We don't push them out of the way, but we can
And there's only one
find
way in and one way
another
out.
way in, or find a smaller truck, but yeah, it could cause delays.
Moan about those developments.
my fire department does not moan. My fire department is there to be there quickly,
Right.
and they don't moan. They just are bringing, they raise.
Do they complain? I need a dictionary probably.
No, they're
Yeah.
trying to be.
Do they whine? You know, that letter was whining.
Well,
And it had no dimensions in it, it had no answers,
They gave us a whole list of what the dimensions are. You've got them right there. The dimensions of what the recommendations are was sent to us as well.
It says here, I see wider access roads accommodate parking on both sides to allow unimpeded emergency response. Again, kind of goes back to the 20 feet, that's
20 feet.
20 feet of clear access that's required by the fire code. We try to maintain
And then
that.
5 for
at
each
least.
side if you want extra.
Right. Yeah,
And they
possible.
weren't whining. They were just trying to say, we've been trying to.
No,
do-"
I understand.
And listen,
It's
I'm gonna
just-
just tell you, I respect my firefighters. I
I
care that they.
respect mine, I
Okay.
respect Westminster's, I respect
we're-
yours.
and
But,
they're-
and maybe I'm just an old construction guy, but I would tell a foreman, what are you whining about? And guess what? He didn't get his panties in a bunch, you know? I mean, I'm sorry, maybe I'm a little bit crude.
Don't worry about their panties getting in a bunch. We're trying to solve the problems for our senior communities that we've given extra density to. Tremendous. 5 times as many houses were built as could be conventional on this property. They could at least make the roads, if they're gonna happen, wide enough for the aging people to get through, and our emergency vehicles and our trucks. If we're building new, this isn't like old stuff that we have to retrofit. This is just new. It's asking for a little bit more pavement.
I understand, and like I say, a lot of things have changed in 25, 30 years, and we need to, I agree.
Okay, good. You agree? Yay.
Well, no, I mean, I agree a lot.
Good.
And I'm fine with some rules, but when you start making rules because of one instance, you end up regretting it. And I've seen that my whole life. So, you know, it needs to be deliberate.
I agree with you, I agree with you.
So one of the things that we've talked about, more so on the clustering side, is open space. Now, there's no open space requirement in our county code related to age-restricted retirement villages and so on. Howard County code, they have a senior institutional district that they call it, and their requirement is 25% of the gross acreage should be open space. Now, when they define open space includes floodplains, wetlands, stream buffers, forest conservation easements, and so on. And then as far as active open space, where people actually are using the open space for walking and so on, they don't have any quantification of it. They just say the community shall include recreation and common areas for residents, including at least pathways and seating areas. So there's nothing quantified in the Howard County Code. But as far as the 25%, I looked at Nell's Acres, and their limited disturbance is just under 21 acres. And of the total 26 acres, so 20% is left untouched. So they're already at 20% open space, following the definitions that Howard County has. So when you then look at inside where they're disturbing and the space that they'll have left over, they're easily going to meet the Howard County requirement for the amount of open space. So the question becomes, do we want to be that prescriptive to start putting in requirements for the amount of open space similar to Howard County? Or do we just recognize that a development like this is going to have that amount of open space? Now, again, open space, they're differentiating open space from active open space. Open space is forested areas, streams, steep slopes, all of those sorts of things. Active open space is a different issue.
Wait a minute, I just stop.
Yes.
And one thing you forgot about.
Yes.
that almost every inch of open space that is on there is a stormwater management pond. I mean, I'm looking at them, there's at least 6, everything in between the houses is big swirls, all 3 of those things, every corner is just all stormwater management ponds. There is no, I don't even know if your dog could, they have dogs, if they'd even have a place to go. You know? I mean, you're looking at this, I'm looking at it in real life when I go there, every part that's there, and Daphne, when you visited there with me, we had a map, and you said, oh, there's space, and all those spaces were stormwater management ponds. They look blue on the map that we have, but when you get there, they're all...
They're dry.
They're dry stormwater management, that's not open space to me, a dry storm. Now, if you make them, well, I've said before, we can't have wet ponds here, but there are ways to make them flowers and things in them. We don't require that either. So they are just, they're just, every open space there is a stormwater management pond. So if you exclude stormwater management ponds and call it open space, but I think we should exclude stormwater management ponds too, because that's not, it's not an attraction, it's not something that is nice to look at. We're giving, again, we're giving density away. These are so to have 20 to 25 houses on it. We have 130. And if it was nice and they had some green space around it, that would be great. But how do we take out stormwater management ponds as their open space? It was never, okay, first of all, our open space is defined in the code.
Yes.
Read the definition.
Yes.
Does it say stormwater management pond?
It says ponds.
It does not, well,
Yeah, it does.
read the rest of it.
Right.
Okay, my question is that with someone in a pond?
Yes.
A pond to me has water in it. I mean, when you read that, come on, Chris.
It's interpretations, yes.
Read what it says about open space.
It doesn't exclude them though either.
Well, we need to, because the way I read it
So we
is
certainly can.
So do you want to require active open space?
some active, and that's a sidewalk. That's
And absolutely.
And some of it's just green, just
Do
some of
they
it's.
have any at the community center or any place here? None.
Inside, I don't, what's inside, I've not been inside.
No, but outside, nothing?
It's a little pad in the back, like a little patio, but I don't know what you do on it. I don't
Well,
think
you
so.
said there's a community center.
It's,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
but it's, I don't know what's in it. It could be tables and chairs. I mean,
But there, I mean, I think that's Commissioner Kyler's question. There is a community
a small
center.
community center,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, there is.
Yeah.
That doesn't
And
make-
actually, I've got that next.
Okay.
So speaking about amenities, which to me amenities would include that active open space and so on. So we do not have a requirement for it.
No requirement.
Right. Howard County has a requirement for a community center in these types of developments, right? And they've got, it's very prescriptive, it depends on how many dwellings there are and so on. So I went through and used their calculation and looked at Nell's Acres. And if this were in Howard County, it would require a community center that's 2,280 square feet. What Nels Acres is constructing is 2,500 square feet, so it's larger than that. And they also have the exterior benches and patio area, and that's basically the question.
I haven't read everything in Howard County. What I'm trying to say is, if you read what should be in a retirement community, I'm not trying to, how do we make this better so it's what we anticipate? Why we gave the density away for age restricted. Now, if you're a community, one of our communities that's recommended is 31 houses. It's not cost effective to have a community center for 31 houses. Some of it depends on how large of a site it is. If you live in a 700 unit place, you can have a lot more amenities. But there should be some expectation of, even with the size of site, what you're getting out of it. These people don't even have a front yard. Their front yard is not even as wide as this table. So we talk about mowing, their backyard's not as wide as a table. So you gotta put it in perspective. That's why you want some of these places to walk to. I say walk to, just to have, look around and see something with a tree on it. I showed you one of the, when we did our little tour, I showed you another project that was done at Homeland. Embarrassing, you can't even walk on the sidewalk, it's not wide enough.
Yeah, that's an
And the
issue.
person's walking in the street, these are a bunch of old women that live, elderly women that live there, and they have nowhere to go. And let me put this, we can do better than that for our seniors. And I want to do better than that for our seniors. And that's my goal. I feel, I mean, people buy these things, can we make them better? Yes. Should we expect, but it's not the developer's fault. They did what was in our non-requirements. I'm not here to defend or not defend. I'm here to be proud of the product that we asked people to put forward, especially at the price points that they're coming in at. These are not affordable houses. People say, oh, you get more affordability. There's not a house that we've looked up 10 of them, there's not one under $750,000. Okay, so they're not affordable.
Yeah, and absolutely want to assist in getting the better product.
Thank you.
Where what we need is the specific direction of the specific things that would need to be improved to get that better product. And so, and recognizing that there's a lot of discussion and a lot of work that goes into that. So taking the roadway widths, having the discussion as to what is an appropriate roadway width. Is it 20 feet, 21 feet, 22 feet, and so on and so forth. Looking at other counties' codes and
I would
having those
just
debates.
use the fire code. I mean, I would
Well, the
use
fire code says 20 feet,
20 with no parking.
and that's what they've got.
What I've just said is, in something like this, it is unreasonable not to assume they're gonna park there. So I think we should say they've gotta put 24 feet on one side and put a sign up, or put 30 feet, 25, 20, 25, 30. And they will. They will do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're not. So they will do it, and I think even in this project, they would have done it if they thought that that's what they
They
needed.
are, they're putting up the
No parking signs, yes.
But I don't want them, I want you to understand, I don't want them to put up the no parking. The people aren't gonna have anywhere to park. I mean, I feel, when you,
So what you're, which,
I
so
think
you would not want them to have the 20-foot wide.
okay, I don't,
So that's where, that,
Yeah.
I think we should require, in a tight development like this, that they should have enough for parking. And if they're not gonna have it in the front of their house, they should have it somewhere close by. That people can have a guest over and not have to, I
And-
don't even know where they'd go.
And so 30 feet wide is wide enough for parking along one side of the street, correct?
Two sides.
Is it one side or two sides?
Would be a fire EMS question.
I have their list. It's 20 and 25 for one side and 30 for the other side. They sent us the list.
I don't know the answer, I
What
don't know
would
the answer to
people
that.
do if you pick something 30 feet, but you put no parking on one side and
do
parking
that.
on the other? Would they honor that, you think, then? Because they'd have a place on the one side, but maybe not park on both.
And my issue with this, because the houses are so, there's not even space. A lot of these communities, they have 3 or 4, and then there's a space. There's like 40-foot space. This community has a 10-foot. It's not even wide enough for a car to park in the middle of the houses. It depends on how dense something is. There should be some parking within some reasonable direction. I think once you see it, you'll understand it. But a lot of these communities have, down in Howard County, one I went to is a beautiful community, because they're not all jammed in one big row. So there's a big space. So you can
Right.
park 3 or 4 cars here and 3 or 4. So there is parking there in addition to the driveways being
Yeah, I
long
can
there.
picture that.
And I don't know what their minimum is, but they're not building, they don't look like this. Yeah,
So
I'm not trying to demean it, I'm just
back-
trying to.
Back to the road thing. So just anecdotally, I know there's a couple developments, age-restricted developments down in Montgomery County, right off of Route 27, just south of Damascus, that you can barely drive a car through. Somehow that got approved. But then, of course, you go to Wildwood in Mount Airy, and it's a fantastic 55 and over. I mean, there's some green space. I don't know if it's stormwater management, but it doesn't look like it, so who cares, right? I mean, it just is woods. So clearly, I mean, other counties have not been, I don't know how anybody's gotten away with this, but I mean, if it sounds like 30 feet and you can allow parking on one side, because people have visitors, especially, you know, when you start aging, you have company. I know that there's many towns that do not allow on-street parking in a lot of areas, but that's not realistic. So it sounds like we're narrowing down to maybe 30 feet, and seems reasonable. I think it's gonna, I don't know if that is a cost issue for developers as much as I might think it is, because of asphalt's not cheap, but
Well,
I just,
And more paving probably leads to less houses.
to less houses and more stormwater management, or?
Yeah.
So it's just,
More-
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
but,
more inlets, more stormwater management,
Yeah.
that's the problem with
Significant
more.
more cost.
Well, it sounds like you're open to off-street parking.
Oh, yeah.
As well. It doesn't have to be the entire road, but we have seen developments where they'll put like 8 parking spaces that are perpendicular parking to the street that you can park there, right?
And they
But
would make that
something, what I heard was extra parking spots per
There
X
should be, I mean, we say
houses.
2 per house.
Right.
There's gotta be 2 per house plus, because people come over. All those houses have 2 people in them.
Right.
And you talk about impervious surface, these driveways are so small, they're small, well, most people have longer driveways. You're gonna put it in the street now so people can park. So I don't think your total impervious surface is gonna change more than it would if it was a normal driveway that you could fit. I mean.
So you're
not-
talking about making the driveways narrower
No,
then?
no.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry,
No,
I'm not understanding.
and we can talk about this little stuff. I just want you to understand, having a driveway that you can't get out and if you're a senior and have to step into the grass, it should be wider. It should be wide enough you can put 2 cars and get out of your car.
Okay, we can look at what a total width would be, and that could be part of the requirement, is the width of the driveway.
And I wish that, I wish that some of these folks would just do it. I mean, I guess it was me and I was doing a separate one, I'd say, gosh, I need to improve this. But we need to require it, and the planning commission, all through here says they may do this, they may do that. They don't have the bandwidth to do that, to look at all these plans, they're hard to read. We should have some of it, some expectation. Because, I mean, there's so many things they may do, and they say, oh, well, they didn't require it. You ask them, those poor guys, they don't, I mean, they look at plans after plans, they're not developed. We have to have a clear standard of what the minimum is, and everyone is different, depending on how dense it is.
Is there a desire to require amenities? Require a certain amount of active open space, like a certain percentage of the site having trails or things like that? Or requiring clubhouses and things like that? Or are we satisfied that developers are naturally doing that anyways as part of the product that they're trying to sell?
you know, the amenities piece, that's a tough one, because, you know, the second you start doing that, you start raising costs. And you start raising maintenance and things like that. And I think we've all experienced as elected officials, you know, everybody wants a playground, or they want a bocce ball court, or they want pickleball, but then, of course, someone's got to start paying for that and maintaining it. So I don't know where I really fall on amenities. I mean, let's face it, the further south you go, I think the more it matters. You know, the season, the warm season's longer, you know, pools stay open longer and things of that sort. So I don't know if that's necessarily a major concern for me or not.
Okay.
I mean,
But I don't know how everybody else feels.
well, I mean, it depends on how many site, I don't think we should require it, no. On the amenity, it depends on how you define it, another building. But somewhere you have the open space definition, I'm trying to find it, it's in here somewhere. But what was intended as the open space definition is what we should go back to. Now, it depends on the size of the community. If you have, we have one with 31 houses, they're gonna have sidewalks, they're gonna have a fire pit, they're gonna have a gathering area, that's nice. If it's more, I don't think we should dictate that, but there needs to be, follow the open space for what it's supposed to be. You get more clustering here, this is more than clustering, we don't follow the same requirements. I just found another thing here that I was looking at was the turnarounds for the fire department. We require them in certain areas, but like this particular one, you know, there's one area where you can't turn around, you have to back out. And
Yeah, I had turned around.
and I think it should follow just because it's a site plan, it shouldn't be different on those types of things than a subdivision. If it's important enough to have it in a subdivision, just because of the way that you purchase the land, it should be important enough to do it, the turnarounds for a site plan.
Is it turnaround because they're not done and they're phasing
Nope,
or?
it's straight in, straight out, you gotta back
Yeah.
out.
So
And
you
that-
can see that on the left side, there to the south is the parking area to the clubhouse. That's the clubhouse in the
The
lower
sort of
left corner.
standalone building.
So
Standalone
that one
building.
has no other way out and above it
Right.
has no other way.
There's gonna be
Yeah,
more
and
housing
one
on the other
above
side.
it,
There's gonna be-
yeah, and so it's a 150-foot long dead-end street that has 5 houses on one side, 4 houses on the other. And
Is
so
there a
the question-
minimum distance to require cul-de-sac?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Brian, shouldn't that have hit?
What's
the
that?
turnaround?
I'm sorry?
A turnaround, is there a
The
minimum
minimum
distance
distance before
that
you
you need?
required a turnaround or an exit on that? Didn't hit?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
No.
I'm just suggesting, it's not even for, it's for the fire trucks, it's also for, again, we now have all these trucks going up and down. I mean, every day, there's Amazon, FedEx, I mean, the model's right there, and I can tell because I've had to back out from the model. Because there's no, you can't, and the driveways, you can't turn around somebody's driveway because they're all parked in the driveway. There's not like, I mean, sometimes you have room in a driveway to turn around. These people are parking like this.
Need parking in
Yeah.
garages.
You can, you got,
Garage is full of stuff.
well, stuff, you gotta put your trash can in the garage.
So we can look at,
I-
so
listen, I
there-
don't
at
know-
some point, there's gotta be a minimum distance that you don't need to turn around. Now, what that distance is, so these are about 150 feet. I mean, we can certainly look at best practices as far as,
I also think it makes a difference depending on how dense your housing. If it's if it's like that and you have 2 houses and there's somebody's driveway and there are mountable curbs and it's a yard,
Yeah.
you can turn around.
Yeah, drive in
Not
your yard.
Not a
Yeah.
yard, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But here, because there's cars every single driveway,
Mm-hmm.
there's really, you can't turn around. So it's different, it's because they're so close together. In a regular, Density makes a
increases the
difference.
need.
It plays
Yes.
into it. Yep.
What else? I want to make sure we get to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are we
I
now?
don't- Amenities, okay, this is the last item, and I know Commissioner Krebs, this is something that you feel is very important. So universal design guidelines. So, we do not have any requirements for it. It is in other counties. I pulled Howard County's code, and essentially what this is, the idea that, for age-restricted type, homes, that there's certain things that make sense for people who are aging in place. So no step into the front door and a certain width for the front door and things like that. So the way Howard County addresses it, they basically say that at the site plan process step in the process, the developer needs to look at the list, and there's a list of required and some optional and other types of requirements, and basically tell the Planning and Zoning Commission what it is that they're proposing to do on this site to make it as part of these universal design guidelines. That list of design guidelines go on the construction plan sheet. It's right on the front. And then when they actually go and build these houses, it's something that's brought up in the pre-construction meeting that this house is going to have handles rather than doorknobs and things like that. I don't know how much this is enforced during the building permit process, but it's right there on the site plan, and so in theory, if they didn't build those things, then it would be a violation of the site plan. But I've got a list here of the types of things that Howard County has in their universal design guidelines. Things like no step access, 36-inch wide front door with lights, 36-inch wide full accessible route must connect the first floor dwelling. Maximum vertical floor level change is a 1/4 inch. Complete living area and bath on the first floor, and so on. So a lot of these are building permit type requirements. So it would be kind of up to our permits and inspections folks to really enforce these, but they absolutely could be dictated up front as these are the universal design guidelines that we're expecting. They go on the site plan, and the developer from the get-go says that they're committing to doing those. So if we want to adopt something similar to that, we absolutely can.
And months ago, one of the first things I did is put together, and I sent it to everybody, it's just age restricted purpose and the purpose and the guidelines. And again, I just threw it together just from going out there on different lists of what the design principles should be. Again, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We should, Howard County went through this whole list, and they did something called required and aspirational. And I think it's
Yes,
good to put the
yeah.
aspirational too. And you just mentioned a bunch of them, the single-family home, no step entry,
Mm-hmm.
36 wide door frames, all interior doors at least 32 inches clear so you can get through, complete living areas, master bedroom. They're all doing that, but we don't require it. It certainly should be a requirement. Lever handles on the interior, exterior doors, non-slip floors. This is a dumb little thing, but visual ID of visitors, just to put a peephole in. I mean, if you're living there by yourself, you want to be able to look, they're little, but they're important for seniors. They're important for everybody, but because again, I don't think anybody, a lot of people do this automatically. No slip floor, not to have a step down into a family room. Right now, they can do any of that. But if you say, what should be an age-restricted, rocker light switches, lighting in a closet and a pantry. When you get older, you can't see too good. Maybe you should do it anyway, and many are doing these things. But if you put some of these as aspirational and some of them, a curbless shower. When you get older, it's hard to step into a bathtub. It's hard to step over a shower. Having the grab bar either ready to be installed, that you could put it back there, or it's installed. And some are very nice looking, they're already built in. Some go over and above and do this stuff, and some of them don't because they just do the minimum. And unfortunately, sometimes we just have to say, if you're getting density, these are the expectations, and these are the things we'd like you to do too.
Yeah. Yep.
And universal design is not defined. I mean, everybody knows what it is theoretically, but there's no like list of this is exactly what it is. So we can put what we think is mandatory, and what we think is highly recommended, and some that is aspirational.
Yep. So those are all the items that I was able to come up with. Is there anything from a design perspective that I have missed that is something that, as you're looking at these, that we think we want to revisit the code and potentially tighten up?
I would be curious, and I can ask some people, but how many builders are already doing this? You know, they might say, yeah, 3-foot wide door, of course.
Right.
And then and I like one place has talked about sturdy walls, not having all the grab rails, but a place you could future install them, because I wouldn't buy a house that had all the grab rails in it, but some people would, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, you know, and what they really object to, you know, like, I thought about the roadway, 25 to 30 feet adds 20% to the paved area. It will definitely add inlets and stormwater management. It definitely will rack up the cost, which is why when I argue about legal driveways and BZA turns me down, that's most of the reason is erosion control and stormwater management, not the little bit of paving, you know?
Yeah.
And
it's
I kind of understand.
And really that's all we're trying to protect the county and all of us from are the unintended consequences. It would be easy for us to just make all of the roadways 30 feet wide, 35 feet wide, just picking a number, right? But there are a lot of unintended consequences, and I'm not trying to fight not doing that. I just want us to all be aware of what those are, so we can have a good discussion and then make a decision as to what we want to require.
Informed decisions on any and all of these
Yes.
things, yeah.
Absolutely.
What are the benefits and drawbacks?
And while I may well agree with what you guys decided, if Florida Rock didn't have to do a full paving section on Doss Garland, that might be built by now. But, and like I say, I'm
I don't
not
know what it
saying
is.
that was a bad decision, but.
A development.
I don't know what he's talking about.
It's a development.
Okay.
Or Hampstead would have taken it.
Yeah, they take it.
And again, if these people lived, if we didn't allow this, if we didn't even allow retirement homes anywhere, it was R40, or it was R20, you're gonna put a number of homes with larger driveways anyway, so you're really saving because their driveways are so small anyway, you can't fit anything else in it. Everybody wants to have somebody come visit. So, you know, do we wanna minimize it? I don't think it's reasonable in a place like this. People are still driving, hopefully. We're Carroll County, we wanna do it right. I think builders that stick around, some of the national builders are coming in and they do the minimum they're allowed to do. I mean, that's their job, they're for profit. Other developers are homegrown and they wanna leave their legacy. I've seen some, Coventry Meadows as an example, beautiful, beautiful facility. It was privately done. It's beautiful in Westminster because they want to leave a legacy. The family that built it, we can't make everybody have it like that, but we want to at least have a standard that is reasonable for people to move in. Again, these are not affordable these are not, we're not saying, oh, good, they're coming in and giving us, these poor people, affordable houses. These are not affordable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole nother issue.
So just like we did before with the clustering conversation a couple weeks ago, we'll put up draw up a list of all the things that were mentioned today, send it to the board, and barring anyone saying, oh no, you got that totally wrong, or none of, we'll just start thinking about how we would, what the next steps are to bring back to the board to some of these kinds of things, how we go to the next step from this kind of a high-level concept of we're interested in this, that, or the other thing, to brass tacks. How do we get it?
One thing I didn't bring up either is the 3-story. I mean, this you don't see on the site plan, and it's hard to tell even from the plan how many stories they're building. But it's not, like, these are 3 stories, and they're 3 stories with narrow steps that you couldn't put a thing. So when you put your bedroom downstairs and then your garage goes a little maybe into the house, your actual living area becomes way smaller, and you got up and down. In the spirit of senior living, you're putting more of your living up and down, and you're taking this with your bedroom. It'd be nice to require that a certain amount of the living space is at least 50% of the house. You know what I'm saying? These are 1,900 square feet. They're like this. If you the nice ones, I go to Carol Vista. Carol Vista, they're mostly on one floor, and they've got over 2,000 square feet on one floor. Well, that's your living area, and maybe a bedroom or so. But you're not counting all this space you'll never use.
Understood.
Okay, sorry for
And you guys, if you come back and say there are unintended consequences with these 3 things,
Yes.
that's legitimate.
That's what you all get paid the big bucks to make the decision on, is look at those unintended consequences and what we're trying to get to, and then.
Does Public Works get to talk today, or?
Doug did say something.
Yes.
Oh, he did?
Scarlett said
He did?
Yeah.
And back to Director Hines' comment, we were looking over here, if it were county roads and it was a dead-end county road that was under 300 feet, it would require a T turnaround. If it is over 300 feet, it would require a court.
Okay,
Okay.
so 300
300 feet,
feet.
and this is 150, you said?
It's about 150, yeah.
So
So-
So it would have to have a T
We
turnaround.
require a T turnaround.
150 would require a T
A T.
It
turnaround.
does,
Okay.
So it would require to be 150 a T turnaround, 300 and above would be a court.
I'm just
So
accepting.
Doug talked, and Chris and Brian nodded their heads.
But if we made it the same as we require for a subdivision, I mean, that's acceptable.
Yeah. Yep, sounds good.
All right, thanks, everybody. A motion to adjourn? For real this time?
Stay a little longer, what time is it?
You gonna second?
No, I've got to
No.
go. I've got to
Okay.
go.
I
It's
second.
3:30. It's only
He
half-
seconded.
I second.
You don't have to, we don't have to leave, but just,
All those in favor?
aye,
Opposed?
but you can't stay here. Yeah, that's how, Blues Brothers.